Welcome to Stoic Courage, the truth behind the game. You think you're leading, you think you're in control, that every move, every phrase, every calculated silence you drop into the conversation is bending her emotions in your direction. But here's a question the Stoics would ask. Are you truly in control if you're still trying to control her? Because the very moment you need to lead, you've already lost your inner stillness. And when you lose that, you stop being a man she follows and start becoming a man she watches, cautiously. You see, in today's world, the art of game is a strategy. It's taught, marketed, sold like a product. Say this to trigger her feelings. Disappear for 48 hours to build desire. Mirror her energy to make her feel safe. It's a script. And if she's been around long enough, she's already read it. But here's the catch. The man who needs tactics is the man who doesn't trust his presence. He reaches for tools because he fears he's not enough without them. That's not leadership. That's dependency. The Stoic man, he doesn't play games. He doesn't need tricks, not because he's too noble, but because he's too grounded. So before we dive into these 5 tricks men often use to guide or manipulate women, let's make one thing clear. We're not here to judge the tactics. We're here to expose what they reveal about you, because every trick you use says more about your insecurity than it does about her psychology. If what you've heard so far speaks to something deeper in you, don't just scroll past. This space isn't built on hype. It's built for men who are done pretending, for those who no longer want to chase, but want to lead simply by being. If that's you, subscribe, not for the algorithm, but to remember who you are. He's not adjusting to win. He's aligning to live. She doesn't follow him because he manipulates emotion. She follows because she feels his clarity, his absence of need, his refusal to chase what isn't aligned. No games, no role play, no pressure, just presence. Presence is the most honest form of power. It doesn't demand, it doesn't convince, it just is. So drop the mask. The silence that hides fear, the depth that's just decoration, the distance that controls, the need to be her hero. None of that is necessary. When a man finally chooses to live in truth, the first trick, the silence that speaks, he doesn't text her back. He leaves her on read. He pauses before responding to her questions, keeps his replies short, and lets the silence linger just long enough to make her wonder. Is he confident or is he playing? Silence, used correctly, can be seductive. It makes her lean in. It makes her doubt. She starts filling in the blanks with her own fantasies. And to many men, that's power. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. Silence is only powerful when it comes from inner stillness, not from strategy, not from fear, and definitely not from ego. The truth? Most men who use silence as a tactic are not calm. They're anxious. They're not in control. They're trying to appear like they are. They think silence will make her chase, and sometimes it does. But now you're in a loop, where your worth depends on her reaction. Your stillness is fake. Your power is conditional. The Stoic doesn't go silent to provoke. He goes silent to observe, to remain untouched by chaos, to return to himself. So ask yourself this: are you quiet because you're grounded? Or are you quiet because you're afraid to say the wrong thing? There's a difference, and she feels it, even if she can't explain it. Real silence isn't a tactic, it's the absence of need. True stillness doesn't pull, it just is. The second trick, the false depth. He talks about the universe, about trauma, energy, philosophy, healing. He drops quotes from Marcus Aurelius or Rumi mid-conversation. He stares off into the distance as if carrying the weight of galaxies on his shoulders. And for a moment, she believes he's deep. Because surface-level guys don't speak like that, right? But depth isn't about what you say, it's about what you carry silently. And when you talk too much about how deep you are, you expose the truth. You're trying to appear deep because you're not rooted in anything real. The Stoics never flexed their wisdom. They lived it. Their silence was more powerful than most men's speeches because it wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to anchor them in the present. So what happens when you build connection on false depth? You may attract her curiosity, but you can't hold her respect, because one day she'll realize that your words are empty, that your philosophy was a mask, and the man behind it was still chasing validation. True depth doesn't need approval, it doesn't need quotes, it just lives, quietly, intentionally, and fully. A man of depth never says he's deep. He just exists like the ocean, calm on the surface, unfathomable underneath. The third trick, emotional mirroring. He listens carefully. He nods at all the right times. His tone matches hers, soft when she's soft, intense when she's passionate. He mirrors her energy like a perfect emotional echo, and she feels understood. But there's a difference between understanding someone and copying them. There's a line between empathy and imitation. And when you cross it too often, you stop being real. You start becoming a reflection. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men mirror emotions not because they care, but because they're afraid not to. Afraid that if they show their own tone, their own rhythm, their own presence, she might not like it. So they vanish into her vibe, hoping to be accepted. That's not connection, that's submission. The Stoic doesn't mirror, he resonates. He doesn't dissolve into her energy. He anchors her with his own. He can feel her sadness without becoming sad. He can hold her fire without needing to burn. If you always reflect others, you'll forget how you look without a mirror. So ask yourself, are you being present or just responsive? Are you feeling her or losing yourself in her? Because a woman may like how you mirror her, but she will only respect a man who remains himself in the presence of her storm. The fourth trick, withdrawal to control. You didn't text her back, not because you were busy, not because you were centered, but because you wanted her to feel your absence. You wanted her to miss you, to overthink, to chase. That's not mystery. That's manipulation dressed up as mystery. You think pulling away makes you powerful? It doesn't. It just reveals how afraid you are of being ordinary, of not being wanted, of being too available. So you disappear to regain control, to feel superior. But let's be honest, you're not disappearing because you're stoic. You're disappearing because you're scared. Stoicism is about withdrawing from noise, not people. It's about pulling back from attachment, not from connection. You think silence gives you leverage, but leverage without presence is just emptiness. It's a house with no foundation. One gust of real emotion, and it collapses. Here's the difference. The Stoic man walks away, not to punish her, but to protect his peace. He doesn't vanish out of spite. He distances himself out of clarity, not because he wants her to chase, but because he no longer needs to be chased. So next time you want to vanish to feel powerful, Ask yourself, are you walking away, or are you just running from your own insecurity? The fifth trick, the hero mask. There's something intoxicating about being the one who saves. The strong shoulder, the calm voice, the man who walks into her chaos with answers, clarity, and strength. And for a while, it feels noble. But peel it back. Was it really about her? Or was it about feeling valuable? It's easy to confuse love with validation, to think that being needed equals being loved. But that's not connection. It's dependence, masked in heroism. The truth most don't want to admit, the need to rescue often comes from a deeper desire to matter, to be irreplaceable, to feel in control in a world that rarely allows it. So the role is taken on, the fixer, the healer, the emotional savior. And when she opens up, it feels like purpose. When she cries, it feels like mission. But when healing begins and independence returns, suddenly the ground shakes, because now there's nothing left to fix, no storm left to calm. And without chaos, what remains? The Stoics had no interest in playing the hero, not because they didn't care, but because they understood. Strength isn't about saving someone. It's about standing steady while they save themselves. To love a woman without needing her pain. To walk beside her growth, even if it means she grows beyond needing the presence that once held her. That is Stoic love, free from control, free from identity, grounded in presence, not performance. A man who finds his worth only in fixing others will always be threatened by their healing, from tactic to truth. So many moves, so many calculated pauses, perfectly timed silences, clever emotional shifts, and yet none of it ever brought true peace. Because tactics can spark attraction, but only truth sustains it. That's the irony. The more effort is spent trying to lead her, the more control is lost over oneself. Every trick is a negotiation with fear, a plea for validation, a quiet whisper of, "Am I enough now?" But the Stoic man, he doesn't ask that question. He knows, because he's not performing, he's being. He's not adjusting to win, he's aligning to live. She doesn't follow him because he manipulates emotion. She follows because she feels his clarity, his absence of need, his refusal to chase what isn't aligned. No games, no role play, no pressure, just presence. Presence is the most honest form of power. It doesn't demand, it doesn't convince, it just is. So drop the mask, the silence that hides fear, the depth that's just decoration, the distance that controls, the need to be her hero. None of that is necessary when a man finally chooses to live in truth.